All right, welcome everyone. Today is July 22nd, 2026, my grandpa's birthday. He's not around anymore, but it's now 4 o'clock and this is a meeting of the Heber Light and Power Board. The board members that are in attendance are Kendall Crittenden, Morgan Murdoch, Mayor Clements, Mayor Simons, and myself, Heidi Franco. Welcome to all of you that are here as well as our staff. The first item on the agenda, and maybe I can just ask a really quick question to Jason, please. Is there a need for any closed session today?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay. All right. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda with the June 24th, 2026 minutes. And thank you, Riley, for putting in the timestamps. That's great. We also have the June financial statements and the June warrants. Any questions, comments, or motions on the consent agenda? Okay, thank you. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Aaron should be joining us anytime. I'm not sure if he's actually. Okay, so we'll go around the table first, please, and then we'll let Aaron go last. So Kendall, please.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Aaron, did you want to vote? Oh, I don't see him in the. Is he? Well, okay, we'll let that pass for now at 5-0 with the one excuse because he's going to be joining us soon. Okay, now Mark Beauchamps is here for a discussion and review of the rate plan and financial analysis. Everyone, this is not a voting item yet, to my knowledge, right? It's discussion only.
No, the rate plan has been approved last year. And Mark is here to just confirm that there doesn't need to be any changes made. If the board would like to make changes, then we will schedule a public hearing for September to make those changes.
So we're still on the same percentage as we had approved before. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mark, we're going to turn this over to you, please. Feel free to share your screen.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Heidi, I am able to talk now, just so you know.
Thank you, Aaron. Good. Go ahead, Mark.
Yep, I'm just trying
if
to.
You could share.
Go. I think I have the right one. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. It really all we're doing here is 2 years ago or last year, actually, we set a rate plan that was approved by the board and approved in a public hearing. And one of the objectives of the board at the time was to have the study reviewed in the following year to ensure that the projections are still on track. And so what we did is we looked at the financial projections and to make sure that the 3.5% adjustments that were approved last year are still good. And everything is coming through. I just wanted to review this with the board to see if there's any questions. But as we discussed in the last year, the 3.5% were the adjustments in the 2 upcoming years. And this year, we would also institute or reinstitute the power cost adjustment. And all of those that were planned are still are what we included in this modeling. And these are the assumptions that we use. That some of these assumptions did change slightly. They're just updating. This is the growth rates, the power supply cost changes that was provided by UAMPS, and this is the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan did change somewhat. Some of it got shifted around from previous years. But basically, this is the capital improvement plan, and this is our projected impact fees that we used. We did modify the impact fee projection because last year we used $3 million of projected impact fees. But in the last couple of years, you've had a little over $4 million coming in through impact fees. So we felt it appropriate to use that number. This is the financial projection with the approved rate adjustments that are already in place these 2 years. Now, in the modeling, what we're showing is sometime between now and 2029, it's showing the need for an additional 3.5% adjustment. Now, with these adjustments that are approved, the debt coverage ratio is showing the conservative number of 1.22, which is largely dependent upon the timing of this bond issue down here of 46 million. But with this bond issue, we're able to start replenishing our cash reserves. We're below our minimums in the first 2 years, and that was shown in the original projection. And then in 2029, it shows that we are achieving our cash reserves that are above our recommended minimums that are listed right here. So, but you can see our debt coverage ratio is improving in each year with these projections. And we're exceeding our minimum coverage. We try to maintain a minimum of a 1.4 coverage. Now we are projected, this is based upon the capital improvement plan and the timing of that. But this is the potential debt issuances that may be needed to fund the capital improvement plan that is currently in the modeling. And of course, like I said, everything is dependent on when those are actually spent or needed. So before I move on, is there any questions about this?
Mark, do we run into any issues with arbitrage between these really high bond issuances and then the higher reserves that you're pointing out to us in the last column?
No, not at that point, because all the bond proceeds will be spent. You see, when you run into arbitrage is if you issue this 45 million and let's say only spent 20 million of it and the remaining 25 million, in a sense, was invested until you needed it in the following year or so. And if the interest that you received from those invested bond proceeds were greater than the interest that you paid on the debt, that would be arbitrage.
Yeah, but it just seems that we're going in that direction. And what I worry about is how in the world would we borrow 45.9 million if our debt coverage ratio is only at 1.22? Because I thought it had to be at least at 1.25.
Yeah, and that is the year that you got to remember too. It's all we're assuming that everything is going to happen in day one of the year. And of course, that isn't going to happen. So it's shifted further into the year, and those payments really would not start until probably 2028. But we do tend to be conservative when we do these projections. And when it comes to debt issuances, we do look at, in a sense, a worst case scenario.
Any other questions? Please proceed.
Okay. All right. This is just the minimum cash reserve calculations. For anybody that's not familiar with how we look at this or do this, we look at how much the utility, needs to maintain at a minimum cash to fund the working capital needs of the utility. And the working capital needs are primarily driven by the timing difference between when you actually pay a bill and you get money back from customers. So you may go all through the month of January, paying for labor, materials, post-file costs. And then at the end of the month, theoretically, you read all the meters, send the bill out the first week of February. You don't get that money until toward the middle of March. So it's that timing lag that we're trying to make sure you have the cash for. In addition to that, we do look at how much capital is planned on being funded through the cash reserves. So that's also included. Not what's funded through debt, but just through cash reserves. And then we put in a small amount, in your situation, about 2.5 million for unexpected events. Um, it could be an ice storm, a windstorm. It could be a transformer, unexpected failure of a transformer, those different things. We set aside about $2.5 million for those unexpected events. And when we look at the minimums, you can see that it starts off at about 17.5 million, and each year it does go up. And by 2031, it's projected at about 21 million. So that's the minimum level. We want to see you above that. Right now, we're on track to be above the minimum in 2029, based on the projection.
Okay, what I don't understand here, please. Um, current portion of debt service reserve. No, that's not it. I think I'm looking ahead and I'm trying to see how the debt service matches. So I'm sorry if I missed you flipping a slide, but
Oh, no.
I'm really interested to know where you're projecting on a couple of slides down that the debt principal and interest starts at 9.1 million in 2027 and goes up to 11.7 million in 2031. Didn't that show on a previous slide? Yes. So I'm seeing the current portion of debt service reserve start at 7.5 million to 9.7 million. And then on
Right.
the later slide, it goes from, debt principal and interest. What's the difference between current portion of debt service reserve and
Yeah.
the actual principal and interest of the debt, please?
That's a great question. What happens when you issue debt? You have two payments that occur throughout the year. One of them is an interest-only payment, and the other one is both principal and interest. And what we're trying to do here is to identify the highest debt service payment that occurs throughout the year. That's what we're trying to keep in your reserve. So that's the reason why, if you were to do the calculations, for example, if you go down here, if you took 83% of this $9 million,
Right.
oops, you would end up
With that other figure.
with that number, with the wrong way. Yeah, with this number.
Since we have to pay it all, why use the lower number? Why use the 7.5 million instead of the full number?
We're just trying to get the highest debt service payment that's needed throughout the year in your cash reserves. In other words, in the minimum cash reserve calculation. Remember, we're trying to identify the working capital needs. So one occurs, like the interest only may occur in month number 6 or 5, and the principal interest payment may occur in month number 11. So we're trying to get the highest debt service payment.
Well, I understand why you're saying that, but because we have to pay it all, I'm not understanding why just the highest debt service payment is showing there instead of all of the debt service. I just don't understand that.
Well, the reason is because during that 6-month period between when you make the interest payment and then the principal interest, you have additional rate revenue coming in. So it's not the combined portion that we're trying to get, it's the highest portion. Because we have funds coming in all each month also throughout the year.
So can I ask, when you roll over to 2028 on this slide and 2029 and so forth, when you're rolling over year to year, are you still accounting for all of the principal and interest as you roll it over and do your projections in the following year?
Correct, it is.
You
So
are.
this only to determine the minimum level. In the cash projections up here, that has the full payment in it.
Right. Wait, the cash balances has the full payment?
Well, it's coming out of the cash balances, yes.
So, okay, so is that projected cash balance column, is that a net figure or is that a gross figure? Net after debt, net after principal and interest or
Yeah,
gross? for
that's the
principal?
projected cash balance after all your bills are paid, including debt service.
Including debt service. Wow, that is super high cash balance there as the years go on. That's obviously more than we've ever had. That's very,
I think you were up around 25 million a few years ago, I think, but yeah, and of course, right now, you're really good about having these projections updated. And right now, the projection is probably going to need to be reviewed again between now and 2029.
oh, sure, sure.
And so we get another opportunity to look at this to see if the 3.5% and the 0.5% here are still needed.
Okay, I'll let you proceed. I'm just really interested in seeing what your assumptions are here.
Right? Coverage ratio, operating income. When we do a financial modeling, I mentioned that we try to make sure that you meet or exceed your bond covenants, and also that you have adequate cash and reserves. And so when we set a revenue requirements for the utility, and revenue requirements is how much we need to recover from customers and rates. And it's not an exact science. So all we can do is define a range. In other words, we have to set rates high enough to maintain debt coverage, to maintain certain cash reserves. But there's also an upper boundary that we don't want to exceed. And that is these numbers that are in this line right here. The target, or actually this one right here, sorry, the target operating income. What this line item represents is when you put an asset in service, every year the replacement cost of that asset goes up. So even though you depreciate assets and you recover that through your rates theoretically, um, you're still missing, in a sense, the inflationary increase in the replacement cost. Because theoretically, what we're trying to do is to recover from customers not just the cost of the assets that were invested, but also the future replacement cost or the wear and tear that they do each year. So that target operating income represents the inflationary increase in asset replacement costs that are occurring each year. That becomes our upper boundary. We don't want to exceed that number because if we do, we're then overcharging our customers. So we set these boundaries, minimums and maximums. And then that allows us to accomplish two things. One is to keep the utility financially stable, but at the same time, develop a plan that minimizes the year-to-year rate impacts on customers, and to try to balance those two. And the only way you can do that is to have ranges and the minimums and the maximums. And that's what we're doing here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this is just the rates that were approved. Right now, this is the second year rate adjustments. Residential will go up 3.5%. Residential pumping 0.8, small general service 3, small general service pumping 6.1, 3.2 for medium general service. The pumping is 5%, large general service 1.5, and then yard lighting. And an overall increase of 3.5. Like I said, these rates are all approved. already, so there's no need for a rate hearing unless the board wants us to modify the rates.
Mark, I'm not sure if I should ask this yet, but it seemed like you were recommending to moving the large commercial and net metering and the pumping to time of use. So were these things checked against those recommendations?
They were,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
So you've done a lot of
They-
modeling there.
Yes, and we did test the modeling because you guys got great data. And so we were able to basically drop that in our modeling to double check the revenues. And they came out, I don't want to say spot on. It's projected that we might get a little bit more revenue from pumping than what was initially projected, but it was a very slight amount difference.
If you don't mind me just pausing really quick, Mark, because we have some new board members here. Everyone on the board, we've been thinking about time of use, and we've had it be voluntary for customers to switch, where if they use power off peak, they get a lower rate. If they use power on peak, then we charge a higher rate. And we thought it was a way for customers to be able to save money on their bill. I don't know what margin, number one, Mark, that when you modeling, the changes to the time of use for several of these charge categories. I don't know if you modeled that they would continue their same consumption patterns or if they really would go off peak. Please think about that. But board, the bigger idea here with time of use is whether or not we were going to require it for all customers to go to time of use, whether they wanted to or not. And we hadn't pushed it that far yet. But so my second question, Mark, is, are these figures based on requiring time of use for all customers or allowing them to still choose?
I believe it's based on all customers.
All customers being
As an
forced.
opt-out version, yes. So all customers will go on time of use. But you can see what we did is the difference between on peak and off peak, at least to start, is very slight, very modest adjustment. So it's a 2 cent per kilowatt hour difference. So in your first question was what would be the response from that? Very small. And the reason is this rate up on top, I'd have to go back and look. I think that number for the on peak should be somewhere around 20 cents and the off peak probably something like 7 or 8 cents. But we don't want to do that immediately because, and my numbers don't take those for, I'd have to double check them. I'm just giving you an example. But if we were to implement the full time use rates, you're going to have winners and losers. And of course, eventually that's going to happen, but we want to do it in a manner that's is minimizes the impacts on customers on a year-to-year basis. So we don't want to say we're having a 3.5% increase. And if we put in the full-time use rates, some customers may go down 20% and others up 30%. And of course, we don't want to do that. So we're just talking about real slight adjustments for now, just to get customers used to it. And then as time goes on, you can see in the following year, we're moving the on peak up a little bit more and the off peak down. So we're continuing that spread between these two over time. And
Okay.
again, just to minimize impact, but I don't think you're getting much response because the price signal's not that strong at this point.
Oh, could I just pause and ask Emily or Jason, how many customers have switched to time of use at this point?
All net metering customers are on time of use. We do have, several like EV customers that have opted in. A few very small users have opted in. I don't have the exact number, but there's not like hundreds of opt-ins that are not net metering. And net metering will stay on their time of use rate that they're currently on. And all residential will go to this plan 2 or year 2 plan of the plan rate, which is a time of use based rate. But there is an opt-out rate. So they will move to it. If it's really something they don't like, then they can take the action and opt out. And Mark has an opt-out rate also that was presented with the rate plan. And, you know, they can have the ability to opt out if these rates just, you know, are really harming them. But that's not the way this is designed. Like Mark said, this is, you know, going to look like a 3.5% increase to their standard bill, even though we're going to a time of use, because he's blended it, you know, kind of so tight with the on-peak to off-peak pricing. We will begin that spread, like Mark mentioned, you know, 5 years into this, we stay with this rate, there will be a much larger spread between on-peak and off-peak. But that will come with the next rate plan
After year 3.
after year 3. So
I
these are
heard
these are the rates you approved last year with the rate plan.
So I think the opt-out was once a year, right? And then they couldn't opt back. It was a once a year choice,
Yeah.
and it still is.
Mhm.
Okay.
If I could just add one thing to that. Um, Based on data from utilities that have implemented time of use, when you offer an opt-in like you currently have in place, you're lucky if you get 10% of your customers to opt into time of use. But when you do an opt-out, where customers have a choice to go off time of use, usually around 90 to 95% of the customers stay on time of use.
What's that
So
again?
what's that?
Usually the customers, what again?
Okay, if you go to opt-out, which is what we're doing in year 2, usually 90 to 95% of the customers stay on the time of use rate.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens, but I'm pretty certain it'll come in around that number. That's what we typically see. So, you see, this is just, again, it's what's already approved. Last year, this is what the increase was that customers saw. These are the increases in year 2 and year 3 on average. All right. So, this is the rate for the existing time of use, the opt-in. And this is actually what we're striving to get to, this differential, 20 cents and 8 cents. But that'd be several years in the future before all the residentials are on that. Residential pumping will also go to time of use. Whoops. Small commercial pumping, they're on time of use now. And of course, this is just the rate progression on the time of use. This is the medium commercial pumping. Again, they're currently on time of use. And this is just the rate progression on that. Small commercial, we're not proposing time of use for them at this point. This is just, again, just a rate progression where they would see on average a 3% increase. Medium commercial, again, not on time of use, but this is just the rate progression that we're making. On average, 3.2. EV charging level, oh, this is not it. That'll be a different later meeting. But this is what basically we're just for review for the board to make sure you want to stick with the plan and the rates that are already in place and approved.
Can we pause really quick Jason and Emily, I don't know if you know this, but I'm concerned about moving the pumping to time of use because I don't know if watering turns will affect those customers adversely where they can only pump at certain times and it's not always according to the time of use schedule.
We've already moved the pumping to time of use
But
and we've met with all those customers. So,
they able to not be affected because of watering turns?
well, they're certainly motivated from the rate perspective to do their pumping off peak.
Yes.
And so like we've met with Heber City Public Works, we've met with public works folks that are the pumping customers and let them know that, if they can program their systems and do it that way, it's in their favor. It's a lower rate to do their pumping. In some areas, they said, we just can't do it. Like Jim at the sewer district, he's like, I've got to pump when I have to pump. And, and I get that, and that's something for the board to consider maybe with the next rate plan is, take into consideration maybe those accounts, but they're very few. Other pumpers, have asked for a time of use rate. And so especially irrigation companies, so that
there
they're
you go.
pumping at a lower rate.
Okay, but we're not having any small one individual customers that are doing the pumping, but that could affect them?
No, we rolled the residential pumping into just the residential rate with this
Mhm.
rate plan.
Yes.
And so those one-offs that are just like pumping on their well, they're just on a residential rate now.
Okay. Thank you. Keep going, Mark. And then I hope you've probably noticed that you've skipped some slides that you gave it to us earlier. And I had questions on those previous slides, but you
Okay.
feel free to proceed with where you were at.
All right, let me get to that. This is go back to the slides I missed. Assumptions, projections. This is just a graph really just showing the changes in cash. This is actually from this slide right here. Just a graphical presentation of it. This is the same thing with debt coverage ratio. This is the minimum coverage ratio we like to see, and this is what the projected debt coverage ratios are in the green line. And that, of course, is the same as what this showing here on this slide. And the debt coverage ratio, how it's calculated, is it's basically cash generated from operations. You can see in this, it's projected at about $11 million. But that cash generated from operations is divided by your debt service payment. And that's how your debt coverage ratio is calculated. Okay. Pretty straightforward calculation. This is the adjusted operating income, which is really from this slide. So this is the projected operating income here. And this is the target. So you're below the target as we want to be, actually, in this case, every year. And that's what it's showing here.
What's the accurate debt coverage ratio? You said it was 1.25, but it's represented as 1.4.
I think isn't that a target that you want, Mark?
That's the
Is that a
target.
requirement by our bonding or by the bank or?
No,
Yeah.
1.25
It's
required.
1.25.
Yeah.
Correct. But we want to see you above that because bad things happen. So we really want to see you above 1.4.
Which is 4 years away.
Correct. Well, you get really close to it in 2028. So it's really, and it would be highly unlikely that this is going to happen because, as I mentioned, we're assuming that the debt gets issued at the beginning of the year. And usually that doesn't happen. It's usually sometime during the year that gets issued. So the full debt service payment is not, we have the full debt service payment in, but most likely it's not going to be the 9.1 million. It's going to be something less.
No, it'll be a moving target, especially based on how quickly we spend capital and get assets
Correct.
in operation. But I mean, if 38 million projected in this year, is that, I mean, that's what's driving that. Are we in line for that?
Likely not, but transformers are coming to the board, in September, and that's going to be a big spend item, putting the deposits down on those transformers. Those bids are out right now. The work that's progressing at Southfield Sub, with the engineering, I mean, we are right now in a spend mode, and through the end of the year, we'll be spending quite a bit of those bond proceeds, but we're not going to get to the full magnitude of the capital plan. And that's the other thing with the capital plan is, some of those projects, just due to lead times now, are getting spread out over like a 4-year spend. And so that's really hard to kind of manage on this end of the business, because you got to get your collections right on what your ultimate spend is going to be, and how that spreads, how the collect to the spread, changes, is where these projections and stuff like that can look a little bit skewed. The other thing to keep in mind is, we have such a big capital outlay that we're spending, and not building reserves. And that'll come up later, but, and that's just how we've been operating, meaning, we spend what we collect in impact fees. And so we're not like a lot of your other systems that don't spend their impact fees and are sitting on huge impact fee accounts. We're spending that as it goes. So.
No, I mean, take a look. I mean, I think we mentioned this last month, but you take a look at the capital that it's going to happen in the next 3 years. I mean, it's likely to say that much isn't falling off. I mean, that's going to be, I guess these are 40-year assets, or, I mean, I don't know how they break up, but
Yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that
the other thing to keep,
for this.
yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, especially for new board members, is impact fees are based completely on the capital plan.
So they're obviously not a portion of the revenue based on the rates and the things we're collecting on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
They're going 1-to-1 to capital, and the balance is coming out of bonds and then whatever cash that we plan to spend.
Whatever cash we can recover on rates, yes.
Okay.
And, Mark is doing what he should be doing, and that's telling you what your cash reserve should be at. It's just we're growing so fast that it's easy for us to spend those funds and not park them in a bank.
I'll agree. Yeah.
And, that comes up. We have customers that have come in and spoken in front of the board why are you sitting on 7 million in cash? And
7 million cash isn't very much,
yeah, no, for us, it's not that much.
considering where we're going. Yeah.
You do have members or ratepayers that'll come in and chastise you for sitting on too much cash, So it's a balancing act. It really is. And then the other thing too that we got to keep in mind is the capital plan itself is heavily loaded because we want to be able to collect as much as we can on impact fees through these heavy growth years. And so, when we do that impact fee study by state statute, we can only have we can only study that first 6 years of the plan. And so if I'm not loading that capital plan up with my worst case scenario of what our spend needs to be to keep up with growth, then you're going to see decreases in impact fees coming in. So, I can't submit a really cheap capital plan to Mark for rate studies purposes and then turn around and submit a heavily loaded capital plan for impact fees. So, we're constantly playing that balance on the capital spend.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Mark, are you ready to go to the cost of service slides?
Sure.
If you're
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah, we didn't update the cost of service, just so you're aware of that. This is the same as from the last time.
Um,
Um,
where is it? It says electric cost of service results. I think you just barely passed it, maybe.
I think, oh, there we go.
There it is. When I look at this on the cost of service and the projected revenues, it seems like we're subsidizing a lot of these categories, and I was wondering why. Because the cost is not, equivalent to the projected revenues.
Correct. First of all, do you remember this was done in 2024, but so some of these have probably gotten a little closer. But when we look at this, like the average increase from the study, which would be to hit that target operating income, we would have needed at the time a 14.8% increase. So like yard lighting is pretty much right at cost of service from the average. Residential pumping was an issue. That class was heavily subsidized, but it's a very small class. Small general service, very close to cost of service. Just so you're aware of how we look at this, because cost of service is a snapshot in time, so it's 1 year, and so every year customers' usage patterns and stuff do change. Usually not significantly, but it will have an impact on these numbers, as well as what we do with the rate designs, because every year we're moving toward cost of service. However, we don't necessarily want to take medium general service pumping and increase them 37%. So what we do each year is we give them a little bit heavier of an increase to move in the direction, because we're trying to minimize the customer impacts. So the ones that are really off are primarily your small classes. Net metering is always an issue. But if you look at your large classes, like your residential, 14.6, some of the other ones, small general service right here, 10.4, medium general service, 11.2, large general service, 19.2. So all of those are within an appropriate range. The ones that show the higher percentages really are small classes. And we've taken, the board in the past has taken basically has wanted to move slowly over time.
So Mark, I thought you just said that these were 2024 figures. I had assumed that these were updated figures. Can we get updated figures to see how much of the subsidy or the change is happening?
We could, I don't know if it'd be worth the additional cost at this point, because usually we update the study every 3 years. So I think we're only 1 year into it. I mean, I'm sure these numbers have changed, but they probably changed modestly. And
Well, I would
think
appreciate it if you would label from 2024 then, because
okay,
I didn't
perfect.
realize I thought they had been updated since you had come back to us.
Okay, no, sorry about that.
No worries. I do wonder though how much we're subsidizing and how much the change has been since what was projected in 2024.
Yeah, I think probably probably in about 2 years, I think. The study will probably be updated. And we'll be able to get a better look at it then.
Oh, I think that's it.
The plan is to update cost of service right before we redo for another rate plan. That's
Yeah.
that's the schedule we've been on cost of service or as
It'll be next year then.
for consulting costs. So
Well, I just expected updated numbers.
So
Anyway,
probably next year we'll update it.
okay.
This is the monthly customer charges, like residential, for example. This again is from 2024. At the time, they were 1790, and we're targeting to get them up to over time to about $23. And let's see where we're going with that. I'm just trying a quick look. You can see we're moving it slightly each year. The residentials. And yeah, is there any other slides, Heidi, that you want me to talk about?
No, I think you're there. I think you're there. I think you've done it. Thank you.
Mm.
Okay, everybody clear as mud? Are we good? Any other questions for Mark? Okay, so Jason, what were the actions that you recommended for this right now?
If the board is good with the current rate plan, Mark's done a good job saying that we're on track, then we don't need to take any further action. We'll just stick to the rate plan that's in place, and next year we'll have Mark do the same thing, do a review, and come back to the board around this same time and report on whether or not we need to make an adjustment in year 3 of the plan.
So that base rate that we discussed in audit committee quite a bit, it will only be updated until next year. It won't be until next year, is what I'm saying.
Well, the power cost adjustment will go in place on the bills, as was approved last year. And as part of Mark's financial analysis, next year, that will be a portion that gets reviewed because it will go into effect in the October billing cycles. So
Next year.
next year at this time, we'll review that base rate and make sure it's at the right level. That has been reviewed on, projections, and it looks to be correct. And I don't have an issue with the base rate right now based on, what our wholesale power costs are at. But if that needs an adjustment, then we got to get it in effect to really know whether or not the actuals come in to prove the projections right.
Yeah, and it would increase the overall rate by increasing that base rate too.
Yeah, the overall rates will go up 3.5% on the October billing, and the power cost adjustment will go into effect. Now, keep in mind, the power cost adjustment can go either way for the way our power cost adjustment is set up. There could be months that they get a decrease in their bill if power costs are below the base rate, for that billing cycle. We just really got to get it in place, keep a close eye on it, monitor it, and then next year at this time, Mark can do a full review again and come back to the board and say whether or not he recommends raising or lowering that base rate based on power costs throughout the time that we implement it.
So since we do have some new board members, Mark, maybe you could explain, number one, what is a PCA, the power cost adjustment? And then number two, or maybe number one, why do we have a power cost adjustment? And then number two, how it works with the billing. If you could explain that for our new board members, that'd be great.
Let me, the first slide. All right. Right now, in the approved rates, you have what's called a base of 5.71 cents. That base is what's buried within the rate designs that we put in place for customers. So, in other words, every kilowatt hour sold has 5.71 cents of power supply costs built into it. Now, if we do the calculation and it comes out to say 6.71 cents, then the customer will be on the next billing cycle, 1 cent would be added to their energy charges through a power cost adjustment. And that can go up or down. Now, one of the things that we have in place is what's called a 12-month rolling average, which means that it isn't just one single month that we look at, it's 12 months. And the reason we look at 12 months is because power supply costs could fluctuate so much on a month-to-month basis. And we don't want the customers' bills to jump up and then jump down and up and down. So we smooth it through that 12-month rolling average. So basically, that's how the power cost adjustment works. It's the actual power supply cost over the last 12 months, the average cost paid, less that base of 5.71. And that difference is what's charged to customers or credited to customers.
So we started this when the Ukrainian war hit because our natural gas prices started going through the roof all across the country with what Russia was doing. And so because the market was charging us so much higher and we were used to a certain rate, this power cost adjustment means that that extra gap there would be charged back to the customers after us so much. I think we went with a 6-month rolling average first, and now we're up to 12. But that way we would not get behind in these volatile prices. And but then when prices go down below, then we're paying back credits. Does that make sense? Because they already because that base rate we were paying lower than the base rate. So far, so good. And we were surprised that we were buying back, giving back credits when we thought it would, just basically be above that base rate. So it's just the volatility of the market.
It's a protection device for the volatility of the market. But we were on a 6-month prior. With this rate plan, we're going to a 12-month, which will smooth that out quite a bit. Well, it'll cut the volatility in half. So, I think this is a lot better way to go about it moving forward with that power cost adjustment.
It protects us probably against volatility with the Middle East right now, and who knows what else.
Yeah, the mayor mentioned the Ukraine war. What really hurt us at that same time period was coal volatility and a mine fire, and our big coal units not being able to get coal, and then having to renegotiate coal contracts, and those coal contracts doubled. And that's all of that type of stuff can really lead to volatility on the wholesale power market.
And this is adjusted monthly.
Yes. Yeah.
I get it now. It's like my fuel surcharge.
Yeah.
Get it. We do it once a week. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Jason, do we need to do anything as a board to continue to direct Mark to take a look every year? I know we did it last year with just a 1 year, and the thought process was to do it every year, but did we actually direct that
that was part of the motion last year with the rate plan, was to bring back Mark each year of this plan to make sure it's good. So we should have all the board business done and not have to take any action tonight. That's why it's on the agenda as discussion. If the board did want to change something, then we need to get a public hearing scheduled.
Maybe you already said, is the power cost adjustment, is it based off of a published rate or is it our actual cost?
It's based on our actual cost over with the average of that 12-month period. So, and that's the base. So if power costs over that 12-month average go above that 5.7, then there could be like a third of a cent increase on their power bill per kilowatt hour. If it goes below that on that average, then there could be, a third of a percent credit per kilowatt hour on their bill.
So we will go negative even though the published rate says.
I fully anticipate with a PCA that there could be months that they get a credit, especially like if we get like a big winter and we've got like a whole bunch of hydro and our power costs dip down for a couple months. Then there could be a couple month credit, but the way Mark designs these, they're very small. So we're talking hopefully less than a penny type adjustments. So
Okay.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Okay, anything else, Mark, you want to say?
No, there's nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to those updates next year too. Is everyone wanting to continue what was proposed, or do you have any concerns of changing it? I do wonder what our operating budget would be though with that much in reserves in 2031. It just seems that the operating budget would have, I don't know, quintupled by that time. And that's really hard to imagine at this point.
Well, I think it'll come back down though, if, that's part of this outlook, right? Is if we go forward and we start to accrue faster than we need to, then
Okay.
that, if the budget doesn't increase and the cash reserves continue to increase at a rate that's too fast or more than we need to, unless we decide that we want to cover something and have an attitude toward self-insuring or rainy day fund or something like that, we'll have those adjustments to back it off too. But I'd rather build it and potentially be underestimating now than play catch up later. Catch up is so much worse a conversation with the ratepayers.
That reminds me of a report that I asked Mark to generate for us, and Mark's working on it right now, but he's been giving us these projections now since I came on board. And I really wanted him to look backwards and see what he projected and what we hit. What were our actuals, right? When it comes to debt service ratio, cash reserves, capital plan, et cetera, what he projected, what we hit, and be able to look backwards a few years as well as look forward as he's shown us.
Yeah, I got some ideas on some sort of a forecast and schedule that we can project it and then come in as actual. And every month we just keep looking forward so we can project both cash, money coming in on impact, and make sure we understand that like in 3 years, spending the money we're spending, we're not gonna, be out of it, like be bankrupt.
Well, that's what I'm concerned about with the $49+ million bond.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I did not know we could even qualify for something like that at this point. I don't know. That's still another discussion that we have. But
Heber City doesn't stop growing. It's not gonna change. It's just gonna keep going.
I know, but it's still quite a burden, right?
But if you're growing your rate base, it's what it is.
Well,
Percentages.
Jason and I have sparred before about the investment that we need to put in before the growth comes,
Yeah.
right?
That's the hard part because you got to spend all that cash
yeah,
and there's no revenue.
no,
Money and interest.
yeah, it's
Right. And
growth for an electric utility is difficult.
Yeah.
Because you've got to grow your system before you start collecting on those new customers. And, you guys live here, it's years beyond, but we're putting wire in the ground right now where there's nothing.
Right.
So,
Still.
and but as those meters hook up, we've got to have the capacity on the system to, supply that energy. So we've got to have the system built out kind of before you start getting that rate revenue coming in. And growth is hard for electric utilities. It's a real challenge.
Okay.
So-
The thing that I don't know if we've ever studied or projected or analyzed is in these high growth areas or new growth areas like Jordan Ridge. We're not in the basin, but Jordan Ridge, let's just take that for example. Have we ever done any study to see what the potential revenue could be compared to the cost of the infrastructure? Do they at least balance
Oh yeah,
initially or within how many years?
sure. And that's something that we can talk about, maybe taking a look at next year and having, a consultant really dive into those types of studies. And as those grow out, but once we get to grow out and we start growing up with high rises instead of sprawl, we're going to be collecting a whole lot of revenue on a whole bunch of new homes. And, that's what is designed. That's the whole cost causation principle. You're financing right now so that those new hookups are paying their way. If we had this mountain of cash that our other ratepayers had put in the bank, and then we just use that and give those new customers a free ride, that's not
Saying that.
cost causation.
Not
That's
saying that.
just not it. So,
Because we're building in these sensitive lands, slopes, wetlands, you know what I'm saying? These are not the easy, smooth, flat ground to develop. Our infrastructure costs are so much higher.
Don't the impact fees reflect that?
impact fees reflect the capital spend, and the developer is paying for those line extensions in those very difficult areas to actually build power line, especially underground.
Or
You
in the
know.
rock,
Mhm.
in the rock.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, our ratepayers aren't paying for a developer to have a rock saw up there in North Village carving through that gray rock. That's the developer wanting that line extension. So,
right. I don't know.
Is the actual infrastructure in areas like that actually lower per ratepayer then, where the developer's paying so much of that upfront?
Well, he'd pass it on to his
Oh, that,
sale of the
It
home.
might pass on to the sale at home, but for Heber Light and Power though,
they're passing that on at the sale of the home. And that's the other thing that's difficult for us, though, as a very rapidly growing utility, is that developer puts that infrastructure in. Let's say a developer puts $1 million worth of infrastructure in, builds one house on that whole development, and we energize it. Now it goes into our depreciation schedule, and we're starting to depreciate it. So we've got this depreciation number that is just screaming is high too. And no, it's not cash, but it's a real number on our books. So
Depreciation of that line that's only got one customer.
So on a line that was paid for by a contractor, he paid for that. His pocket, our revenue, we install it. We depreciate it out of his cash. That's a good model.
yeah, before we energize it,
Yeah.
then as soon as we energize it, it becomes our asset.
Our assets. So
Yep.
then we depreciate it. So, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably the only way that model works by that much capital.
Mhm.
Yeah.
but
Can I interject here?
I'm sorry.
It's
I
Bart.
just want to,
Bart,
The question I have though, in all of these numbers, when we looked at reserves and debt and inflation and costs and all of that, is I didn't really see the O&M costs or the salaries, how many more employees we're going to have to hire for a larger system, et cetera. I feel like I'm missing that piece. on just the yearly operational budget that we have to pay through rates and we can't pay through impact fees. And that's kind of where I'd really like to get some more information with what he's projecting right now. Is what does that operational budget look like year to year?
Those operational costs are built in the Mark's model.
I realize that, but I just don't see it. We saw all the other figures, but
Yeah.
not how many more employees we probably, I mean, this
It's
is key, I know.
a different number. I mean,
Yes.
it's different than what we're talking about right now. And that's, something, those projections we would have to come back to the board with.
Oh, that's where I'm coming from too, because we learned through sad experience in Heber City that growth doesn't pay for itself, even though it does some. I'm not saying it doesn't. But when you have to start hiring the new employees, you still have to raise property taxes for everybody too.
Yeah.
It's not that just sales tax, or growth alone in property taxes made up the difference.
Oh, for our utility, there's no way growth pays for growth. Not for 30 years. I mean, that ratepayer's got to be on our system for a long time before it actually, begins to,
Well, that's why I wondered about that 5% rate of return that was also projected, because I'm assuming, I don't know,
I mean,
Our
as soon as
substation
they,
costs, our
as soon as they
transmission
start using
costs.
kilowatt hours, they're starting to pay for themselves. But to pay for all the infrastructure we have to put in, buying the additional kilowatt generation out there, it takes time, and the laws are not in our favor. The state of Utah wants to grow,
Oh, yeah.
and those state laws are not in our favor for growth to pay for growth.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
Is it due to the state laws that the impact fees don't keep up? Is that the problem with the initial outlay of the assets? Because I actually disagree a little bit about Heber, or at least, I mean, just Heber, but like our budget increase this year is less than the inflation, which means that growth did pay for growth, because otherwise the budget would be the entirety of the inflation, right? So meaning if we didn't cut anything, even if we added people in, the actual cost to run the city, the actual inflation costs are more than the proposed increase that we're increasing the taxes.
I'm gonna have to talk with you about that because I'm not quite understanding yet. So.
Okay. So I guess still the question about the impact fees, because that's the question mark, like growth paying for growth, as far as when does the ROI make sense on an outlay for rates? We would expect it to be out of ways, but that's the whole idea of the impact fee. So that's the question mark there is, right? Like, and that's why I wanted this review last year about the rates, is because I wanted to look at not just the growth, but also whatever is not covered by, so whatever kind of O&M, if you will, is not covered by the impact fees, right? Like the total outlay to provide the service. And I think that's what we're seeing as far as like the cash reserves. In fact, I literally think that's exactly what Mark just showed us, is that we're actually doing a pretty good job of thinking about that. But it's the ratepayers across the entire org paying for today's needs.
Yes. And they get a benefit from it too. I mean, as we add equipment out on the system, it gives us the ability to, back up their energy where they're currently being served from another source. It definitely has a good reliability component to it, because as we build this system out, we are, looping in areas where we didn't have loops. So we're improving it for the entire system. But at the end of the day, if you didn't have the growth, you wouldn't be building that new substation. So
A never-ending debate. I'll just say that way, right? Never-ending story of running these finances. Hey, Mark, thank you very much, unless he's already left us.
Nope, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. When will we see Mark again?
Bart had a comment. Bart, do you want to go ahead?
I was just you're talking about the line extension and them covering the cost of that, but they don't cover the cost of the substations and the added resource, therefore the need for the additional debt service. And those are our big ticket expensive items. So as much as we like to push as much as we can onto the developer, we're really only pushing that line extension. But the substation, the generation, those expenses come on, and that's where we're grateful we have impact fees, but we're just not able to collect them soon enough. So that's why we do the debt. So.
Thank you, Bart. Anything else? When will we see Mark?
Just to add what Bart just said, like on substations and whatnot, are we can we modularize them so we can put in so many, we can double it, we can triple it, we can quadruple it just by adding components. So that when that growth does happen, that's when we spend the money versus like, oh, we're just gonna build a 5 gigawatt substation, whatever, and we're only using one of them today.
Yeah. No, we've completely changed that model to I mean, anyways, there was, it used to be you build a substation, you do one transformer, you have single transformer failure, you've got, you know, the capacity for maybe just that development. We've left that model behind years ago, and now I think it was in jailhouse and college back in, the 2000s. We kind of took that initial model, and this isn't going to work at the rate we're growing. So we've got to build these things so that they have the capacity available for future growth.
Growth and failure.
Yep.
Okay.
Growth in that area.
Yeah, and like Doug said, failure as well. The reliability component as well.
When will we see Mark again?
Mark's coming to the audit committee meeting in August, and in that meeting, just tentatively planned is, for him to talk to the audit committee about the progressions, and then also begin the discussion on an impact fee study.
All righty. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you again, Mark. Have a good evening.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye. We're on to the next agenda item of a discussion of the Heber line power rates comparison. And Emily, thank you very much for preparing the material.
You're welcome. Okay. So we wanted to just kind of show you how our rates right now are comparing to other similar utilities. So because everybody's rate design is different, I tried to narrow it down to bill totals and per kilowatt hour total, because some utilities charge, so much for the first 400 kilowatt hours, and then there's another tier. So it's hard to just compare the rates side by side. So looking at it this way helps. So these are the cities and that we used plus Rocky Mountain Power. And we did use our net metering time of use rate, and then the Heber Light and Power rate, just residential rate, and then the Hiram net metering rate, and then the Hiram residential rate, just to throw those in there. So we're right in the middle with both rates as far as bill totals go. So Rocky Mountain Power's rates look low at face value, but when you start reading their many rate sheets, you start to see that they have a PCA, but theirs is different. So they take whatever, they want to true up for the prior year, and that percentage of whatever revenue they think they're going to have, that's what they apply. So it's a percentage that's applied across every month, regardless of, whether they're collecting up or down in that month. So it really is just an adder to the bill, and it's big. It's about 20%. So yeah, and they're looking at a pretty good rate increase this year too. So they're gonna move on this if they could move further down, they would. So
Yeah, they had a Public Service Commission meeting last week, and pretty much all groups signed off on their 4.2% increase. That's going to be likely approved next month with the Public Service Commission.
Gotcha. Just a quick question on your rates. Is the demand buried in that or is demand addition?
It is buried. So this, yeah,
Inclusive of demand, everything.
yes, it's the base, the demand, everything. So this is the overall kilowatt hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So,
So this again in the middle.
on the population size, I know Springville's bigger than us. And of course, Rocky Mountain Power is way big. And is Payson bigger than us though, on the number of customers? For
You know,
our-
I don't know that for sure. I feel like their load is probably similar to ours. Do you know, Jason?
Well,
Yeah, all of these cities, I asked them to get the rates on, are very similar size to us, either by load or by customer count. And they're also growing like us. So, they all have, pretty good growth on their system.
Well, I'm just wondering how it seems like I thought the larger areas would be able to achieve some economies of scale that we probably can't. And that's why I'm wondering if Washington and Springville and Rocky Mountain Power look lower to us in this, average kilowatt price. But does that take into account what Mayor Doug just said about, do these take into account demand charges and?
Yes. Yeah. These have everything in them.
What about I just was looking at your rates here, going back and comparing what Mark's projecting, and these rates are higher than, what Mark's projecting as far as revenue. So do these include, do these include facility charges, everything?
Yeah, this is the total bill divided by the kilowatt hour.
Rates are kilowatt. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. This is just because it's too hard to compare them across rates because some of them do have a demand charge and some of them don't. And, they have different tiers. So if you just put the rates side by side, it doesn't really make any sense. You can't really get anywhere with that. So this was really the best way to just look at, okay, for every cost divided by kilowatt hours, this is what you're paying. So that's what this is. It's everything for everybody, unless one thing it doesn't include, and I don't know how to include it, is in this last slide, you can see that there's kind of a little explanation that Chelsea put together that, kind of explained different rate increases for the utilities. And a lot of these utilities are being subsidized by their cities. So, I don't know how to include that in here, right? But, they may have a lower rate, but their city is helping them pay for infrastructure and things like that.
The
That
flex
was-
tax.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you know how many of these cities those entities are being subsidized compared to us?
So I think I highlighted at least 3 in here that stated it in that, they're stated in here as having some kind of a subsidy, like through their city. I don't have the highlights.
So Springville did.
Springville did.
Let's see.
Payson is using,
Payson and Hiram?
yeah, and Hiram's a little different too, because they have some big industrial loads that kind of come off and on, so.
Yeah, that's the other thing that makes it hard. When you're doing like full comparisons, that's why I really like this analysis on just saying, if you have a user that's using 700 kW, what's their power bill going to be like if we apply these rates to that customer? Because, like Springville has, and Hiram both have very big, one very big customer on their system. And they could be charging that one very big customer enough to subsidize their residential rate. And we can't get into it to break it down to that level. But like Hiram could very well be charging Miller Beef enough that they can keep their residential rates a little bit lower, or, Springville could be doing that same thing with their Stouffer's plant. So it's, it's hard to know where they're deciding to subsidize rates with another customer.
Yeah, once you get into this general service comparison, I don't know how good of a comparison this is, maybe for the small use. But once you get into the big customers, they have even bigger customers and like Jason said, industrial customers. So this is probably good for the small and medium size, but once you get into the large, we don't have customers like that. I mean, our big customer is the school district, so it's different.
All right, well, this is really good to know and really good information for our ratepayers too.
Okay, any questions? Okay.
Oh, Emily, one more, please. This didn't take into account our upcoming rate increase, did it?
No,
Great. All right. Welcome again, everyone. We had an outage and we're restarting the July 22nd, 2026 meeting. We're on agenda item number 4 and it is now 5:34 p.m. So the next agenda item is the review and discussion on the purchasing policy. And Bart, would you like to present anything first?
No, because based on our discussion in audit committee last Friday, I feel like I need to hear input from the board as to how they'd like to see it when it's completed, and then I'll go make some adjustments.
Okay.
What I heard on Friday was we need to include a clause that if the purchasing is for items that are non-budgeted, then given a certain threshold, they'll need to be presented to the board of directors prior to proceeding with the purchases.
Thank you. And board, do you want to give Bart any input on where you think that threshold should be? That purchases above what, 50,000? Something like that? Where do you want that threshold to be where we would be notified on unbudgeted items that they want to spend money for? Staff does. 100,000?
Yeah, I mean, coming back to the circumstance was, hey, there's a good way to spend our capital on equipment that, that we rented, that we can RPO it, whatever, and pick it up for the right price versus keep throwing our money away or what, but, I don't know how you write that policy that says, to Bart and Jason's point, common sense business decisions need to be made. But if we spend that capital, is there a trade-off? Does that come out of the capital budget someplace? Like if that means something's going to get pushed down the road, like, hey, we're doing this improvement that really is not going to happen this year. It's going to happen next year. Is there an offset?
Yeah, where I kind of went after that meeting, is, if it's going to affect the bottom line number of the budget, then yes, we need to, get a public hearing scheduled and, adjust the overall budget. If it's within the capital plan, say, and we have an opportunity, like I told you about the Royal Coachman.
Right.
So what I discussed with the audit committee is we learned that the Royal Coachman is going to be tearing up the roads and re-asphalting. And that's been one of our target subdivisions. Royal Coachman's a trailer park east of the town. And, it's an opportune time so that when we do that capital project, we won't have to re-asphalt. We can, kind of piggyback on what the Royal Coachman is doing. So what I'm proposing is we have Adam, craft a policy within the purchasing policy that I sent out that basically says when that type of stuff comes up, then it's my responsibility to notify the board that this opportunity has come up. This reconductor project is going to get kicked into next year's budget, and then we're going to replace it. It won't affect the overall budget dollar amount for the capital budget, but there is going to be that shift in dollars.
And by making this decision, we're gonna save
Yeah.
$30,000 in trenching and paving.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. And why we're doing it.
That's right.
And the explanation as to why we're doing it. And then the next board meeting, report on it. So that, if there's any members of the public that want to know that, then they would be informed as well.
Great, good, good. Okay, but then it sounds like it could be for any amount as long as it's under budget.
Yeah, as long as it's staying within that budget. Like I say, if it's a project that is going to drive, like say I can't kick that and I need to add that to the capital budget, then I would schedule, I would get with you guys, schedule a public hearing in the next meeting, and we'd hold a public hearing and adjust the overall budget.
Okay, I know
Makes sense to me.
yeah, and it does. And obviously we want to trust our general manager that way, but in an extreme situation, this is, where I'm kind of wondering if the general manager or staff felt that, taking the whole budget and shifting it to something else. So and it's still under the amount, but it's towards a brand new thing or whatever, that has never been discussed. Then I get a little worried, right? Because you're under budget amount, but it's something that we didn't know about at all.
Yeah.
Right? Never discussed. And then
That's-
we're thinking, hey, the priority should have been, we thought here, and now the priority completely changed, but it's the same amount.
Yeah. And Bart and Emily and I will get with Adam, and we're going to propose some new language in that document, the purchasing policy. As far as the dollar limits that are in there currently, I don't foresee them changing. Because it does give management flexibility enough but there's other language in there. Like my title was the generation manager. Well, I had a lot of other responsibilities at that time. And now our generation manager is Josh Gustin, and I don't think he wants his title in that document. So, there is clearly some cleanup that needs to
I
happen.
was gonna say, if you're gonna go through it, yeah, just clean it up.
Yeah, but it's in your packet, if as you read through it, we bring that new language to you, next month, we'll, have that conversation on if you want any of those limits changed, that type of stuff.
Okay, does that sound good to everybody? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Bart told us at the audit meeting on Friday that this policy's been in place since 2005. So yeah, it definitely needs an update. Okay, we'll move on then, please, to the review of the cash reserve analysis and dividend calculator review and approval. Go ahead, Bart.
Jason, you got that where you can put it on the screen, or you want me to?
I'm working on it.
So in keeping with my duties every quarter, I'm bringing the dividend calculation to you for a review and a vote, whether to pay a dividend. I started doing the cash reserve, probably 8 years ago. It hasn't been as regular, partly, I don't know, the board changing over sometimes has interest, sometimes doesn't. So I usually show when there's interest, but we'll start with the dividend. as you'll see, quarters one and quarters two, they are cumulative. So we didn't do 16 million in second quarter and only 8 in first quarter. We did just under 8 in second quarter and did 8 in revenue, 8.5 first quarter. But based on the way the calculation is set with us pulling out the depreciation, so it's strictly a cash. We do have distributable income to the tune of about 2.1 million after the second quarter for the first 6 months of the year. So we could issue up to $2 million in dividends.
What is owed this year, Bart?
Well, we haven't paid any, so we would owe
No,
roughly
so
150,000.
50,000 to.
150.
150,000, right, with Heber getting the 75% and then Midway and Charleston getting their 12.5% of the
Is that just the
150,000.
quarter, the 150
No, it's for the 2 quarters,
for the 2 quarters for the year?
Correct.
3,000 for the whole year.
Well, that number, that's another one of those that goes way back. It's been that number since I came here. So there's nothing that says it has to be 300,000. So you can elect as a board to up to $2.1 million, 2.2 almost.
Well, I'm not comfortable with that, but you all might have different opinions. So what do you think?
Staff would recommend paying the dividend.
For this year? For this year, Jason, not the whole 2 million?
Staff would recommend paying the dividend.
For this year?
I'll maybe on top of what Jason's saying is I think we need to pay the dividend, but we need to go back and it needs to be trued up. I think the dividend needs to be trued up, and I think power forgiveness needs to be trued up so that the owners are whole. And I think this is a start, and I think we need to pay this. Then we need a report to true it up and what that means, because it's a big number. And to true it up, we need to understand what that means.
What do you mean when you say true it up? Do you mean figure out what the 300 should be?
No, we already know what it's 75, 50, or 12.5. But the true up, the dividend hasn't been paid since I think 21 or 22. So there's a true up back to there. And then there should be a true up based on power forgiveness.
Now, just so we're clear on the power forgiveness, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. Just because the board has approved that forgiveness for last year. And so if we choose to go forward with not forgiving streetlights this year, then I would like to start billing for streetlights now.
And I agree with that because I mean, again, as a 12.5% owner, I'm not getting 12.5% of the power forgiveness. And that's why I say there needs to be a trip, or Heber City can write us a check and they can write Midway a check.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that's a little bit different. They were forgiven by board direction for 2025. So we're talking about 2026. And I think we had this conversation in January.
Yeah.
We are reading those meters. And so we know what that balance is, for all of them that we're not estimating, because there's quite a few streetlights that we do estimate because they're not metered. And so anyways, we would have to come back to you with that number as to what the streetlight billing amount would be next month. But staff recommends getting these dividends cleaned up. If that means, making a motion today to pay out $1 million in dividends, then we'll come back to you next month and tell you what we have left owing you.
Okay, let's.
I've got a question on that though, still with the true up, and I appreciate what you said, but what what I was asking, and Bart hit on it too, is if the 300 has never been adjusted, should the 300, instead of being 300, be a percentage of?
I thought he said,
Correct.
he said
Makes sense.
it's 300 or anything up to 2.1. It's not,
I mean-
traditionally, maybe it
Yeah.
has been 300, but
Yeah.
why? Is there a reason?
It's just that the dividend is in our budget and to be paid out quarterly if we meet the financial assessment, which these first 2 quarters we have. And just to be clear, if we did remove depreciation going clear back to what we owed you prior, we'd owe you all of those months too. So under current policy, we would owe the cities the full amount all the way back under current policy.
And that 300,000, I don't know where that number came from. I don't think there was anything magical in the bylaws or anything like that, that I think a board years ago settled on 300,000, and it's just kind of like the board pay, 475.32 a month. I don't know
Since
what's
I've been
magical
here,
about that.
yeah, since I've been here, I've seen that number change once. And I think it went from about 200,000 roughly to the 300,000 level. And the chair of the board at that time was Dave Phillips, really pushed to increase the dividends at a certain point. And that's when the dividends got pushed to 300,000. So, and that's just a percentage. After that, it's just a base percentage of going to each owner of what they own of this company. Yes, the board could change that number. The board could.
Should we think about, instead of 300,000, should we think about some percent of the total operating? And that is the amount that we're talking about every quarter. Or every year. That's what I'm saying, is instead of having a flat number that a mayor has to fight for or something like that, should it just be a calculation? And that calculation, does that make sense? As the board grows, it grows.
300,000 of this revenue 10 years ago versus today is peanuts.
I agree. And that dividend has always been at the direction of the board. So if the board would like us to, say like hire Mark Beauchamp to actually calculate out what the dividend should be, we certainly could do that. He does that for places. So, and we've done that in the past. Mayor Johnson and Mayor Potter had us do that study. So he's got it. You just have to refresh it. No,
I do too.
And then is there an accounting adjustment, maybe Bart, for you, on the dividends that are owed but not paid? They become an accrued liability as well as owner's equity. So in the event this thing, let's just say in 10 years, this thing sells, like we're covered, like the entities are covered for the money owed over and above the sale.
Well, by law,
just so the board.
whereas no dividend was ever declared, there's no liability. I cannot, according to generally accepted accounting principles, book a liability for something that was never dictated. So I can go back and say what historical trend, 300,000 a year, what we haven't paid. I can come back with that number, but we are not legally obligated to pay anything because the board through the years never opted to make that declaration.
So if we as a board, whatever the reason, we decide not to take the dividend. Sorry, if we as the board decide not to take the dividend, the money's gone.
Not necessarily. The way accounting works on dividends is if you declared a $300,000 dividend today, you didn't declare the payment of it. You just declared that it's owed. Then I have to create a liability and show that. But then you dictate when that's to be paid. That's when that liability goes away, the expense hits the books. You can always go back and you can look at, you could as a board member, you could make a motion and say that in the years 2023, 24, 25, and first 6 months of 26, the company has earned $15 million and we want 5% of that as a dividend, then you declare it and set the date and then I pay it.
You were just saying, Bart, that because we haven't declared it in the past, you're not reserving against it.
No, because I don't have a legal amount to reserve against. I mean, we have our historical trend, but we don't have a definitive number that the board arrived at or percentage.
Okay, if you look on the trend sheet, everyone, the last time we paid the dividend was in 3, but we only paid 75,000 of that, which means another 225,000 still owing for that year. Plus
Well, that was for 2022 because we pay it in the quarter following.
I'm looking at the trend sheet, Bart, and it's saying in 2023.
Yeah, we paid that in the first quarter of 2023
Right. And so we
for
still
work
owe-
through the end of 22.
So we would still owe the 225,000 for that year if the board wants it, plus the 300,000 for 24, 25, and then the 150,000 for 2026. That's a total of 975,000, which means Midway and Charleston would get 121,875 each. Heber would get the 731,250. It's just take a look at the trend sheet as far as our days cash on hand. We're below what our policy is too. This would be a big chunk of that, of taking away our days cash on hand. So as much as we'd all say, yeah, I can spend that money like that in our budgets, we're also having the flip side of that of reducing our cash reserves. I'm not against giving what's owed this year. I'm just a little hesitant on the entire amount of catch-up.
Possibly. I think we ought to take a look at it though. And let's bring things square and then move forward knowing where we're at.
Let's have
Forget that.
Mark
Right.
get us a study and we can see what that impact means next meeting. But I mean,
Is that a motion?
I think we need a,
Well, and I would agree that we should probably start charging for streetlights. Everybody's got to pay their way here. And then we see how to.
Yeah, that's an archaic policy. That's an archaic policy.
Yeah, I
Hey.
think it's time it needs to leave. We've got to make sure everybody pays their way around here as much as possible.
Yeah.
Whether they're a city or the county or whoever they are. And then we've got to see what what the revenues are from that. Then we look at the percentage idea that Aaron came up with, although I don't know how to calculate that right now. And like I say, we've got a few options. That's probably going to take us a few months, right, to pass this
Yeah.
policy and incorporate it. And it may not start till October. Is that right? If we
Yeah.
started to charge for streetlights, it wouldn't start till October with our new rate increase.
Yeah.
And we can be ready for that by then.
But what we could do today, it sounds like staff's recommendation today
I think
is approve this year's so far. Also give direction to, I don't know why I'm echoing. So give direction to change streetlight policy and then look back to see what it looks like for the prior years. There's a part of me that says, listen, I do want a dividend, but I expect my stocks to not pay a dividend when they didn't make money. There are some periods that wasn't true. Not all of them.
I think, this is just food for thought. But, in my mind, we're an electric utility. You guys own us. We're not paying taxes for any of our product in your right of ways. We call it a dividend, but what it really is payment in lieu of taxes that Rocky Mountain Power would have paid you if Rocky Mountain Power owned this electric system. So, there's, in all reality, I'm not trying to confuse the issue, but we owe you this money.
But when we hadn't done well, we understand that. When volatility is.
I understand. Like
Us
if we're
to please.
really in the black, then, that's when this board, would, consider propping us up. But I don't feel like we're that way right now. I don't feel like that's the issue. It's something that we owe you guys, and I would like to pay my bills. So that's just my staff's opinion.
It just really grinds on me that we had to raise rates so high last year, which was incredible, hard thing to do. And now we can pay ourselves, if that makes sense. And so
You're
that's.
not paying yourselves Heber Light and Power.
Mm.
You're paying the entity that owns this company, and you're owed that money.
That's the way I look at it. I look at it as, you know, I need to be a steward of Charleston's money and what they own. And if I'm being straight up, I need to represent them as it's money owed to them. And that's the way I think we all should look at it.
Disneyland charged me a lot of money to go there earlier this year, and then they gave some of it back in a dividend a few weeks ago. So, I mean, that's just the way business works. So,
Well, and one other kind of tricky thing to think about here too is if today's board, this is a hypothetical, let's say today's board said, no, we're not going to pay anything. And the five of us sitting around here, six of us, I don't know, sitting around here say, we're not going to pay anything. But 10 years from now, his board says, you know what, I'm going to pay back everything that's ever been owed. Then that liability, that potential hit to the company continues to grow unless we say you can, as a board, unless we say a board can never claim more than 3 years back or something else that would limit us. That risk actually keeps getting bigger.
I can tell you that that exact thing happened. We had a mayor and the company did go through a difficult, year during the 2000 power debacle with Enron and everything. Had a very difficult year, waived dividends and continued to waive dividends. And we got a new mayor elected, a new power board, and we went back and paid all those dividends that we didn't pay over that 3-year mayor's period. So it happens. I can't control elections. I want this stuff off my books.
No, and that's why, but I think we need to get a mechanism to get it trued up. And then at year end, it's year end. And if the no dividends were paid because of the performance of the company or for whatever reason, it's closed. There's no more liability. Next year, first day of next year starts a new chapter so that
That's probably a good change for us.
yeah.
I think to take it to that level, I think that we'd have to have Adam take a look at a bylaw change.
Yeah, no, and that's fine, but that's how businesses run. I don't go, well, I made a whole lot of money last year. I'd pay myself this year. Once December 31 finishes, if it's not in the books or you didn't do it in January to close your books, it's over.
I think if Adam's going to look at bylaws in that way, which is, I think, a great way to think about it, like, hey, we're going to limit our past liability based on the financials of each year as we agree as a board or whatever, or future boards. I think it's also worth looking at what should that compensation look like from the entities? Because it's probably and almost definitely not a flat 300. That doesn't make any sense at all.
I think it ought to be a budgeted percentage on an annual basis. And that percentage is going to change because, if the revenues of this keep growing to 50, 60, 80 million, whatever the number is.
It's a rounding error.
Right. No, we've got to adjust to make sure. And that should be I think that should be part of the annual budget of what we're going to budget for the dividend as a percentage. And it needs to be based on performance, just like a real company.
Yeah, I know some cities having target percent revenue or percent expenses. I just got my notice about the transfer $3 million to the general fund, power fund, city of it.
Okay.
It's just easier to manage. It's less conversations, less worry about it. It's just a system.
Yeah.
It doesn't linger. It's taken that way and moved on.
It's budgeted. It's based on performance. If we don't perform, we don't get paid. Just like it's like.
The reality is honest. So if it's in the budget, article just breaks accordingly. Fairly inflexible demand from our customers. you set the prices. So like Jason said, it's really intended to. Or compensate because the owners are doing something.
Okay, so we're looking at a bylaw change, a purchasing policy change, and the rate change, where we're going to, do we have to have a public hearing? No, wait a minute. We're not doing the rate change on the streetlights until we pass the new budget, right, in November? We can't, can we do it sooner? Should we do it sooner?
Oh, no, the board could just, next month, I can put it on the agenda to, be billing all streetlights to the streetlight owners.
Yes.
That will include everybody. And, I mean, Kendall's Public Works Department is going to get a bill from us for their streetlights.
Mhm.
Town of Daniel's going to get a bill from us for the streetlight usage.
Yeah, but we need to let them know and give them a public hearing.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have four notice to work in.
Yeah, we need a
budget,
public,
right?
we need a public hearing.
No, we don't.
Why not? Why would we let them know?
Because that's not a rate. You're forgiving it at the end of the year. We've got an amount that it's already owed. We got the bill already.
No, but
They get dividend.
they haven't received the bill yet. And I really think.
Well, I'm just
we're
saying,
encouraged there.
I'm not saying that's the action you want to take. I'm just saying that the board can do that without a public hearing.
Well, I don't think that's a good idea for.
Maybe we give them.
No, yeah. Yeah, we need to give notice that in the next quarter, they're going to be receiving bills.
We can start billing from that quarter four.
Yeah, yeah. I can't see us doing that in 1 month, everybody.
Budget.
Well, next month, when it's on the agenda, you can tell me when to give notice and when to start billing.
Let's see, maybe in the bill, the regular bill that we send to them, because they get regular bills, okay? We say, the board's considering charging for streetlights starting in November or October of this year. Come to the board meeting in August, to learn more.
I also want, what's that?
And do the same thing next month.
We could in August, and we could hold a public hearing too. I just think we really need to give some public notice on this, especially for the smaller cities that have the smaller budgets.
Well, we can go and meet with them. I can get that scheduled and just say, the board is contemplating starting to bill for streetlights. I mean, we're talking, Daniel and Wasatch County. You guys are representing your cities. I don't know that
We
I
can
have to
put it
come
on
and see
on
you
agendas.
guys. So,
Bring it and do it.
Kendall, do you think this is going to be a big shock to the county?
I report after, when we do that in the end of the year. I've reported the last couple of years, what it is, and I'm just looking to see. Here's what it'll be.
At the same time, oh, go ahead.
2025 streetlight forgiveness for Wasatch County was. $20,762, am I reading this right?
Yeah, I think Heber's was in the 30,000 range.
Well, there's 1,000.
Well, I'm assuming it'll be smaller for, Daniel and Timberlakes and.
Daniel was 731, Carlson.
Independent.
1,730, Midway 14,694. He was 29,958.
Okay.
Right off.
They'll probably ask at the same time if there's a way that they can get, LED lights installed.
Pardon?
LED, some kind of efficient lights.
All over, it's like
Full year.
Right.
LED.
And I would really hope at the same time we do this, Jason. Yeah, at the same time we do this, I really hope that whatever street lights we would replace as part of our programs would be dark sky compliant, right? With the full cutoff.
Heber Light and Power doesn't own any streetlights, and the streetlights that get installed are based on the streetlights that your planning departments have designated the subdivision owner or whoever to put in. We don't have any say in that stuff.
Well, I would hope we'd encourage that then, okay? Encourage dark
We
skies.
definitely encourage LED and we've changed out, you know, all the ones that we know of out there to LEDs. You know, that are just the old fashioned type that are hanging on a power pole. So
We don't have to make a policy change on that particular idea of dark sky compliance and such.
not one of our policies.
None of ours. Well, when you're talking with the entities about this upcoming change and how they can come in August, right, for the board meeting agenda item, but I really think it needs to be a public hearing. I'm serious. There's no harm in going a little above board to say, here's your chance to come and say what you want. Okay, and it would likely just be the entities' leaderships, right? The different mayors or public works or whoever, people. So it's
This board's always been super open with that. When we go and talk to these entities, we'll tell them if they want to come and address the board, come in August.
yeah, I just don't want them to feel like we didn't go through the motions to make sure that it was open and transparent as possible. So I would push for a public hearing in August. And if they come, fine. If they don't come, fine. But you've got to work with them immediately, right? Within what you can do to say, we're going to be charging you for streetlights. And then what about the dividend? What about the dividend at this point, everyone?
Well, we pay it. I think we need to pay it. And I think we need to come up with a new
Okay, for this year or all the way back?
all the way back.
Okay, the whole 975.
Huh?
You're saying fifty nine?
What I'm saying is we need to pay, we need to do a study. I think we need to start paying dividends, and I think we need to understand what, after Mark tells us what the number is, we need to say, is it even achievable to catch it up this year? Or is it a 2-year or a 3-year catch up, whatever it is, we agree on that. And then when this year ends and we make our new agreement that after the year end, it's either paid or not paid.
Or to be based on percentage.
I think it needs to be based on a percentage, and the percentage should be discussed on an annual while we're doing the budget, and it needs to be based on the performance of the utility.
Well, I've taken the direction. I will get with Mark, you know, next week probably, and I'll probably add that discussion to the audit committee agenda. And well, we got him coming to the audit committee in August, so he can have that discussion with the 3 owners at that time on how you want to go about doing that study. And then, you know, for right now, my suggestion would be to go ahead and make a motion to pay out the first and second quarter of this year. And after Mark gets done with his work, make it kind of a goal to get all of the dividends paid out by year end. Get it caught up.
Okay, then how's that going to affect our cash reserves? Even by the end of the year? I don't know if we know right now.
I don't know either. I know we just peaked at 61 megawatts. I know we got revenue coming in, so we'll see what this summer brings for us. I mean, it might
Yeah,
but
we had
really help.
We had negative sales and negative growth, you know, year to date, and that's weird. That is so weird.
We're energy and we're weather dependent, and you know, first part of the year was mild. If we get into, you know, like we've seen the last, you know, probably 20 days, and it's extreme. I mean, we're breaking records. If that type of trend continues, then the revenue's going to come back up because, you know, we got a whole bunch of customers in the highest block right now. So,
Well,
I mean, that's how it is. It's just cyclical here. It's, you know, I mean, mild weather means people aren't paying as much for our product, and extreme weather, they pay a lot for our product.
Okay, Morgan and Aaron, are you feeling good about paying this year's payment? That's first question. Second question, and Kendall, I want you to weigh in on this too, because we've heard what Mayor Doug has said, and Mayor Craig, you're welcome to join in here. I'm just saying, first question, 150,000 so far this year. Are you in favor of that? Second question, do you want to pay the whole catch up, the rest of that? Wouldn't be 975 at that point. It would be 825,000 by the end of the year.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Yes. I would catch it up. And then you kind of go forward.
I worry about that risk going forward. We don't touch it up. I worry that some future board adjusts it higher.
I thought that was part of the policy change though, that was going to be proposed.
But it isn't on it. So
It's off the books.
it's off the books now. It's not actually off the books now. Deal with it now.
It's liability.
Believe me, I would bet money that your city manager knows exactly what we owe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Mayor Craig,
Get it off the books.
2 questions. What do you think?
Pay for the vehicles due and. That doesn't mean that necessarily it all needs to be paid out. Some agreement. And then move.
Okay.
I don't know if
Probably
that
requires my law adjustment.
Yeah, we need that, Adam. We need a percentage distribution formula like Aaron's talking about. And then what else did you say?
The other change potentially for the bylaws would be some way to, like Mayor Doug said, some way to figure out. No, seriously, at the end of the year, if we didn't pay it out for whatever reason, it's not up for option again. You can't come back in future years against it. That is done.
Organization agreement is pretty good stuff, you know, or it's not liability. There's it. And I think as far as having dividend, it's really a budget question, not an organization question. There's a line item that's equal to 8% of projected sales, and we'll set rates based on that. I don't know if it needs to be a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it needs to be set. I think it could be the purview of the board and budget for it and pay it out.
Paid annually?
But then there's that chance of the retroactive distribution with what you're saying, it seems.
Don't need obligation to pay out any past dividends. So it just doesn't exist. That's not what the organization agreement says.
Yeah. What we're talking about here is not that. What we're talking about is we don't pay the dividend for 4 or 5 years. We operate according to the board. So any board can come in and say, oh, well, we think we owe you this much, and make a motion and approve it, and then we pay it.
You hit on that. This is true. These yeses are only true with the new calculation that we put
Yes.
in like this last year. Otherwise, they weren't yeses.
No.
So that's what I'm saying is I'd like to say, prove this and figure out some way to limit the ability for a future board to go backwards and claw back more.
It's really not an issue clawing back. It's just deciding how much you need.
Actually, you know what? I just thought of something. The way we could do that seems something for it. I'm sorry. I just thought of a way we could actually limit this by just us paying attention to this, and then maybe this is something that we just get guidance from the GMs in the future. If we declare a dividend of $1, it stops that dividend. We don't open that quarter again.
That's correct.
That would fix the whole thing. There'd be no backwards because the dividend is declared.
It's not viable to say. And if you think, if the member entities think they should be owed more for the past, it's a matter of adjusting the rates, collecting more money, and declaring a bigger dividend.
Yeah, so maybe with that in mind, maybe we don't need a bylaws change for that part.
I don't think it's really a budgeting question. The organization.
Well, it seems like future boards will be still stuck with this same question then. If we don't put in the part about no retroactive payments within 2 years or 1 year or whatever it is.
Well, that's what they just declare a dividend and it's.
If you declare it, then it stops it. It stops it from that point in the past.
Been declared, it's paid out already.
Is that part of the policy though? That could be forthcoming.
Why not about payments that we don't need that as loans? You don't need to go back in time. Really, you're really looking forward to using even today, all
I find it hard to envision a future board going back and saying, oh, they should have been paying us $4,000 a year instead of 3,000. So they owe us this. I think catch it up where it is and then a percentage thing or whatever going forward.
I have a philosophical difference here, okay? You're talking about owners. I understand that. I totally understand that. But to me, it was the people who bonded first and passed the bond to start this company. So I always go back to the people, not just the government entities. And it's like, we're taking it from the people, but we're giving it to somebody else. Yes, we think our cities will spend it for the people, but to me, they're different groups, if that makes sense.
Well, I know Charleston would benefit greatly with the money. Our tax base is not even a penny compared to Heber or Midway. It's big to Charleston. Means a lot.
Understand that.
We're not all on the same page, but are on the same situation, but we are all owners at a equal percent. And I think we need to run it that way.
Okay, let's just try to summarize this up because I feel like we've kind of bounced just a little bit around. I'm really hopeful that you will contact the entities, tell them about the streetlight charges starting in October, and then we can hold the public hearing either next month or the month after that, but it's coming, right? And we do appreciate their input because everyone needs to pay their way. That's just the bottom line. But then as far as the bylaw or the calculation for distribution as a percentage, hey, that's where I'm a little mixed up still. Are we going to do the bylaw change? Do people want that? Do they want the percentage distribution that Aaron's talked about? It sounds like the percentage distribution would be a policy. The bylaw change is different.
I think right now, all we need is a motion to pay what's on the screen first and second quarter. We'll get with the audit committee and Beauchamp in August and hammer out what the owners want him to actually study, meaning lay out kind of what the request is. And we'll take the task to go meet with all the entities with streetlights that are being forgiven and let them know that going forward, we're going to be billing them for streetlights. I'm not asking for a clawback at this time or anything. I'm just, next month, you're going to be billed for your streetlights. That's all I'm doing. And so right now, all we need is a motion for the payment of first and second quarter 2026 dividends and more to come in a future meeting.
Any motions?
Yeah, Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the 2 dividends that have been discussed, the first and second quarter of 2026, and that we direct Jason to talk to the entities about the streetlight forgiveness in the future, bring that back, and that we also direct staff to talk to Mark Beauchamp in the audit committee and figure out what a future payment structure looks like for the dividends.
Is that dividend at 150,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, let's go around the table. Kendall, you first.
Yes.
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 Okay. That passes 6-0. Thank you. All right, now we're back to Emily for the wholesale power report. And thank you, Emily.
Yeah. Mhm. March stuff.
Okay, wholesale power report. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to report because the June bill hasn't been issued yet. And they haven't trued up the May bill yet either. There was an estimated bill posted today for UAMPS for June. So I did throw that number in there. I expect it will change, but we'll talk about that more as we go down. But so right now we're still kind of in limbo waiting for UAMPS to gather more information for us. So I'll go through that more here, but just to kind of go through this. Natural gas is still well under budget. We're doing really good there. Just burning our hedged gas. We haven't, and market gas has been so low. Anything that we've needed to burn has been like $1 a decatherm, which is crazy. So that's kept us well under budget. And then just the budgets together. So still under budget. And then I first wanted to just show you the load this year. So we're looking at May, June, and July 2026 here. I have 2 load lines on here because now that we're in EDAM and CAISO, we have our full system load, the total usage on our system, and then we have kind of the pack load, which is what they're looking at as our load. So it's our load minus our generation, minus our federal hydropower schedules, because they joined a different market, and also minus our little hydros, gas generation, Jordanelle, all those things. So those lines or bars at the bottom are showing you what our total generation has been on average. And so the top red line is our overall system load, and the bottom line, the yellow line, is our average system load minus all of those things that are reducing our load at the meter. So that line is what we would pay our transmission charge, our demand charge based on. So we're able to reduce that significantly with all the generation. This is a look at peaks. So we did hit 61 megawatts. We've been able to stay, a good 20 megawatts under that with all of those different resources coming in behind the meter. So that's definitely been good for us. And then talking about the bills a little bit more. So this is small print. It was a memo from UAMPS kind of explaining why we haven't got a real bill yet and what, their expectations are. So right now we do have the transmission charge in the May bill. So we know what that was. That's there. I expect it will also be in the June bill when we get it. But it doesn't include any of the true up charges. So you have your resource sufficiency. So you're buying resources day ahead, and that's based on capacity. And then you're selling it back into the market day of. And so there's that margin there. And so they're telling us that basically the prices on the day ahead are significantly higher than what they're selling for. So we're probably paying more than we would in the, the bilateral market that we've been in. So we'll see what that true up looks like when we finally get it. They're still trying to get enough data to be able to give that, to each member and figure out what each member's impact is. So, each member might be a little bit different. They can't just divide it up, right? So we're waiting on that. They're saying it could even be 6 months.
Sure.
So
Well, Emily, what I'm concerned about is that margin between what we buy it at on the day ahead versus what we would have to sell back if we don't need it. Who earns that margin?
well, so the way that works is we buy it we buy our load on the day ahead and then sell it and Jason can correct me if I'm explaining it wrong. But so we're paying our cost for our resources. So that's our base bill, and that's the bill we have. And then there's also the energy day ahead market where we're buying everything we need and then we're selling it back into the market. And so that's the difference. And that it's either paying somebody else on the market or paying us, just depending on where your node is and whether it's a negative or a positive. And it's paying for generation somewhere.
Yes,
So the
yes.
trend is you buy it higher the day before and you use it at a cheaper rate. So what do you do with that loss?
Well, theoretically, there should be no loss because you're bidding your load in, and she showed you the chart where our load that we're bidding in is much lower than
What the projected is.
what our load actually is, because we have so much behind the meter stuff that is shrinking our load to what the grid sees our load as. We see it as 61 megawatts. The grid sees it at 40 megawatts.
I see. Are we buying at 40 megawatts or 60?
Well, no, once we go into the market, we've got the resources. So going in day ahead, we'd have the resources for that 40 megawatts of load. And so our load is in the market at 40 megawatts, and we have the resources to back it up at 40 megawatts going into the market. So if there's spread on the day of where our load is being sold into the market and our generation is being bought into the market, if there's a margin there, then if there's a margin between that, meaning, it's going to be minuscule because we're at 40 megawatts of load and 40 megawatts of resources going in. Now, if we are way short day ahead and we need to buy 10 megawatts of that 40 for the day ahead price so that we're resource sufficient going into the day at $80, you could see going in the day trading at $20, which means, yeah, your $80 buy made you resource sufficient. And if you went in under resource sufficient, you might only pay 20, but you'd have paid a whole bunch of penalties for not being resource sufficient. So, and those penalties are Palo Verde pricing times 3. So, so right now
It's that money. Who makes that penalty? Where's it paid to?
it's paid to the people that came in and their loads didn't show. So, you could have an entity out there that, was projecting that their load was going to be 50 megawatts and their load only came in at 30 megawatts. They got excess resource and they're going to get paid for that resource, but only at $20. So it's very important to go into that day balanced. Like, you got to go into that day for every 15-minute interval balanced.
Where we have some additional risk exposure is that hourly RSE requirement. It changes and it's a certain percentage above the load. And so, if they have to buy 15% more, they're going to allocate that to everybody based on their load for that hour. And so our load is lower because we've reduced it with generation. And so our exposure is much lower than other utilities. We're very lucky that way. But there is some exposure because they're going to allocate that based on your load and not based on your need.
Say it one more time.
They're allocating those costs based on your load and not on your need. So even if you were resource adequate, whatever additional they had to buy, they're still going to assign that. And so that's where that unknown is, that risk that we have. And so that's where I see us seeing a little more costs. Otherwise, I think we're, like Jason said, we do have resources. We're well balanced, but there is that little bit of unknown that we're going to have to, wait and see what that looks like. I don't expect it'll be too crazy, but it'll depend on the month, right? So
When you overbuy the day ahead.
So if we overbuy day ahead and we're resource, we meet the resource efficient requirement, but if we overbuy power today at $80 and on the day that the load shows, we're at 60, then we take that. I mean, we're still paying the $80 for the power we bought day ahead. We're resource sufficient. We shouldn't have any penalties because we're going in long into the market above our loads, but our recovery on that might only be $20.
Yeah.
So we would take that loss.
I mean, you obviously don't want to take that loss, but you want to make sure you're covered so you're not paying the penalty, because the penalty's
steeper than probably what you're going to be losing
On the,
on the buy of your excess generation.
Which is why UAMPS is buying more on the day ahead.
Yeah.
Because they want to be covered. We don't want to be short and pay penalties. So they are doing a good job of that for sure.
on that theory, I mean, if we say, oh, tomorrow we got enough power, we don't need to buy any power, then you don't buy power.
If we don't meet the RSE requirement going in for the day, then we pay the penalties.
Right, but I mean, if today you're saying, no, we have enough resources to generate our own power tomorrow, we're covered. You don't buy any power and you don't need any power, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what we try to do with what the load we're showing to UAMPS. So that, they're on that day ahead purchase, we're a very small percentage of that because we run whatever resources we have available for us to lower what load we're bidding in.
Okay. I'll learn.
And we're doing that strategically based on the hour and what we're seeing for the RSE requirement and the pricing. So our generation profile has changed quite a bit because we're matching it to that instead of just the hourly real-time economic dispatch like we used to.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Are you already adjusting the gap based on estimated changes to local hydro, estimated changes to local gas based on hedging and stuff like that? Like, does that already come in there, or is that something that could catch us by surprise if hydro turned down really quickly, for instance?
Well, with the federal hydropower, we have a contracted rate of delivery for transmission. So we can fill that in with market from the Southwest Power Pool. So even though hydro is reduced because of drought, we can fill that in. There is some risk there because we don't know what that price is going to be. And there's going to be a cost at the seams between market that we pay. So far, that price has been very reasonable. It's been good. I'm hesitant to fill it up. That's why in that other chart, you don't see a flat green bar because I have shaped it, especially, when we know we're going to have solar and things like that, because I want to be careful. That risk is somewhat unknown. So that's all I have.
On the 1st to the 15th, we didn't use any of our own generation. Is that what that says?
So this is an average day and these are the hours of the day. So
On July 1st to the 15th, we didn't use any of our actual generation. Is that what that says, or very little?
sorry. So, okay. So this is for this 5, that's May. And then that's hour ending in 1. We call in power, we call it hour ending in 1 through 24. So that's all 24 hours of the day. And this is just one average day.
Right.
And so, yeah, there are times we didn't use our generation. The peak, so we did use it in the morning and we used it for the evening peak, but we did not have it on right in the night or in the middle of the day. So that's the pink is where you're seeing like the gas generation profile. And so we stopped running it in the morning in June because there just wasn't a need for it. The prices were really good and UAMPS seemed to be resource adequate in the morning. So we'll change. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Emily. Unless there's anything else. Okay. All right. Jason, let's go into your GM report, please.
Okay, I'll be quick. The UAMPS report, Emily pretty much gave it. There was only one UAMPS meeting, one project meeting this month that we belonged to, and it was the pool project. That's where we got the UAMPS, that memo that she showed in her report, basically saying that, the CAISO and PACT are going to be about 4 months behind on their billings of any of the ancillary charges that are going to be associated with the UAMPS power bill that they get from Pacificor. They did do some estimates and the overall UAMPS, they feel like based on what they're assuming those charges are going to look like, that they're going to be left owing for May about $11,000, which on a bill that size really isn't that much, you know? And we're a very small portion of that total UAMPS bill. So they are working on getting us what those estimates would look like trickling down through the pool project. I have not seen them yet. But just know that there's going to be, through this whole period of getting this energy day ahead market up and running, along with the billing in the past, there's likely going to be some line item bills that, you know, that we owe another $2,000 for the May billing, you know, might owe like another $20,000 for the July billing, but we probably won't see that until December, you know, so. And, you know, as we go forward with this and as we get more familiar with the new billing format and everything from UAMPS, you'll see our reports kind of change a little bit as we grow along with this. So,
Will we accrue that as we go in the right time frame, or how are we?
yeah, that's what we're looking at doing, is once we get a little bit more familiar with that, is probably running an accrual balance for KISO billings, so that it gets billed on the right month in the books.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll do an accrual, and then when we actually get what our May charges were, we'll go back and put in actuals instead of the accrual. Yeah. IPA report. I gotta share my screen, sorry. Emily and I were able to go to the IPP plant on Monday, and we were able to take a tour of the IPP facilities, the new gas turbines. This is a picture up there of the Mitsubishi turbine. That's you know, Mitsubishi. That's the Mitsubishi gas turbine portion of the plant, and then behind that is the steam turbine or the steam generator on the back end. So they're making power with both, you know, natural gas is spinning a turbine, and then the heat coming off of that is going into a steam turbine generator. And so that facility right there, they told us in the winter time is likely going to run right around 500 megawatts. And in the summertime, they've reached, I think he said 500 or 432 megawatts. So there is a heat D rate with that. And then this is just an overview. We went to the observation deck of the coal unit that's still there, and I took a picture, and that's units 3 and units 4. So total, you know, wintertime, we're probably looking at right around 1,000 megawatts of generation on that site. And in the summertime, we're probably looking around 730 megawatts of capacity at that site. Our percentage of that, just to put it into what it means for us, is right around 5 megawatts of energy based on, you know, what we get out of that facility. So, really nice, clean facility. I was glad to be able to tour it. It's the first time I've been on the generation deck. So, you know, they're both running, doing their thing for us. And then last thing is in audit committee, one of you asked about tree trimming that's going on. It is a big line item, but this is the 15-foot right-of-way clear that they're doing. And currently they're working in Swiss Mountain Estates up above Midway. It's big work. It's, these guys are mucking out oak brush by hand, chipping it up there on site. But they're doing a good job. I mean, that's a good 15-foot right of way clearance up there all the way to the ground. So that's the work that's being done. I have a whole bunch more pictures. I just didn't put them in this presentation, but that's where our dollars are going on this wildfire mitigation in those high-risk areas.
It's great.
Do we get audited by our insurance or somebody that verifies all this?
Not audited, but the underwriters do take this into account, and me having pictures like this is going to help us greatly. The plan is now that the right of way is cleared and we can get in there. In future capital plans, we'll be like literally trying to, Rocky Mountain Power puts a non-flammable product on these poles up so high. And that's a product we can buy, and that'll be future projects up in these areas, is to continue to harden these areas as far as that risk is how it goes. And that would be my report unless there's any
Nice.
questions.
Appreciate that. Okay, everybody, we're almost to the end, but I've asked Aaron and Morgan to give us a short report on what they learned at the National Conference for APPA, please.
There's a lot going on in the world of power. So exciting. No, the report would be that the agendas and the breakout sessions and things this year were a lot less personnel focused than I thought and hoped that they would be, frankly. I think it's kind of hard to see the agendas when we register for them. Last year, the personnel training and thinking about succession planning and organization structure and stuff was super helpful. Changed kind of how I thought about resilience and career pathing and stuff here. That wasn't the case this year. This year was mostly about generation resiliency, about the difficulties in understanding all of the different risks that could come for generation. So whether that's from wildfires, whether that's from insurance, there was a lot of discussion about insurance, whether that was discussed about to a certain extent, some federal or some different government impacts that could cause issues with generation in the future. That's kind of where the focus was this year, or at least in most of the ones that I was able to attend. I think overall, the APPA organization is trying to stay relevant in what they're explaining, for sure. I think that a lot of the people in the rooms weren't looking for that personnel stuff. So I'm not saying it was a miss from the conference perspective, so much as I went and hoped that we would hear about, what it looks like to think through everything from succession planning to employee retention to safety and that kind of stuff. And that wasn't the topic in most of the things this year. That said, our organization is clearly well respected. Not only from the UAMPS folks, but other people throughout the US. Many people came up to me and I was able to wear a Heber Light and Power shirt. Many people came up to me and had positive things to say about Heber Power, had positive things to say about Jason or Emily. I don't know that there was anybody that said anything about Bart. Sorry, Bart, but some people know these names and said, "Oh, I love Jason. I love working with him. I know." Or I love Emily and what these guys are doing for public power in your area. We look up to you in different ways. So that was really cool to see at a national conference, frankly. And then the other takeaways I have overall is that there doesn't appear to be any significant, or at least from what was coming out of the meetings, there didn't appear to be any significant bellwethers or early warning signs from like a federal kind of policy perspective that we need to be aware of, so much as just the overall guidance of make sure you have a plan for your generation, make sure you have a plan for your needs, make sure you have a plan for your risks, and you're paying attention to these things. And there were a lot of bigger organizations out there saying, this is the risk we had with fire and how we dealt with it. This is the risk we had with, solar coming on too quickly in our area, or how we're dealing with battery storage in our area based on, peak demand or EV charging and stuff like that. So that was the focus of the conference this year. Like, again, a little bit of a miss for what I hoped to get out of it, but still positive. Still really good. Good classes, good speakers, good challenging thought to make sure we're talking about the stuff. And frankly, a lot of the stuff we talked about this year, with whether it was the safety manual redo, whether it was like the overall operating manual, whether it's talking about how Emily thinks about buying into energy and hedging, that's the same kind of stuff that was echoed back from the classes and the breakout sessions.
Thank you, Aaron. I'll just add a couple more things. It was eye-opening for me going for the first time. It's a big conference, a lot of people from all over the country, very technical. I learned a lot, took a lot of notes. Just a couple of the different topics. There are lots of breakout sessions, and Jason and Aaron and I tried to split up, divide and conquer, right? U.S. energy market outlook, strategic communications, communicating with customers, especially when there's an emergency, just having those systems in place, preparedness, resilience, emergency response. We were given some legislative updates. I attended a session on nuclear energy. It was interesting. Someone from the Idaho National Lab was there, and they were just talking about nuclear on a national level, and then some, speaking about their states. A leader from the Department of Energy spoke and sort of gave us an overview on things. James Danley, Department Secretary of Energy, and just talked about how when Trump came into office, he signed various executive orders to retain some assets that were slated for retirement. And, we've talked a little bit about that, just how depending on the administration, things do change in the energy world. And they just talked about how they had set the goal, or the administration set the goal for 3 modular nuclear reactors by July 4th, and that 2 of them were critical, and the 3rd was going to be critical. So they were meeting that goal and moving forward with that. But overall, it was really positive. The speaker they brought for the closing portion of the conference was Mike Aruzione, captain of the U.S. hockey team that won in 1980. And the movie Miracle is based on him and his team. And so that was really cool, and sort of a motivational thing to end the conference on. But it was really good. It was very informative. They had a lot of materials, and they had little material stands throughout with brochures about different classes and training and information online. And so that was helpful. And then, of course, the booths that they had, all the different vendors, a lot of information there. So overall, it was good. Glad we had the chance to go.
So was there any explanation of why Trump was giving up on solar? Even though I can understand why he'd keep the coal, but why he was giving up on the wind projects and such?
Kinda. There was a joke or two about trying to understand Washington, and
No real rhyme.
And correct. Yeah, there was a joke or two about how hard it is to understand, and to not, I think the overall message was, don't focus as much on the policies that might shift in and out of different administrations. Focus on what hardens your organization. Focus on what makes you more resilient across the board. It was. I hoped that there would be a little bit more on that, but there wasn't, and I think that might have even been. I don't know. It seemed like they were trying to tread water or tread carefully. Let's say there in that answer, but I don't know. Did you get a different take on that? No, this year's interesting. This year, I mean, I went to last year. Last year seemed to be more leadership and even board. Like I got a lot out of last year. It was challenging in a really interesting way. This year seemed to be, it would have been potentially more beneficial for staff to be there, maybe.
I see. So was there any concern about the energy grid capacity given AI?
Didn't come up.
Really?
Didn't come.
That's surprising. That is very surprising.
Yeah.
I would have thought that would have been a big issue, but
Yeah,
it's the political.
EVs came up a ton, because a lot of big cities are
Mhm.
figuring out how do they deal with EVs? How do they have battery storage sufficient to deal with solar generation and in-house solar and
Mhm.
EV, spike demand. But yeah, AI.
One last thing, Mayor.
Yeah.
One of the sessions I went to was on building resilient teams. And it wasn't anything really big or new, but I thought it was just good reminders about being proactive. They had a survey to prevent burnout. So you can get feedback from your employees as to how they're doing and how they're feeling and making sure that we're supporting them. Just realistic expectations, and how it relates to leadership and safety risk or safety issues. If you have a burned out crew, that's not good for a power company. And so I thought that was good, just, for management to be aware of and just to keep tabs on, right? Just regularly check in with employees, making sure that they've got the support that they need and that not too much is being expected of them, that the job description is realistic.
And Carly's gone, right? Next week. Okay. Okay. And was she able to go? No. Okay. Well, feel free to forward any of these materials that you have to whoever you think is the appropriate person here, like that kind of information, Carly.
You guys hit roads to do maps. With also for college.
Yeah.
I think I didn't call on.
Yeah.
In the year past, you guys.
Yeah. She mentioned you can do it on your own and just submit for reimbursement, or you can have her do it.
Yeah. Logan, so 2013. No, yeah.
Okay. Morgan, are you going to go?
I am.
Okay, I'm planning to go. You're planning to go?
You know?
Yeah.
Plan.
In Logan. Okay.
I know I know.
Mayor Craig, what about you?
Activities way.
They have good breakout sessions. They have a lot of good general training and they really talk about specific issues, which I really appreciate for our area. And they bring in national speakers too, and experts.
Yeah, I have.
Is it held at the university? Where's it at? At the university there, or where do they hold it? Oh.
At the hotel. And they have some funner activities there that I have not participated in, but that's why you have to sign the waiver first before they even let you register.
Sounds too serious for me.
Shane, you could go up the canyons, you could go to a chocolate store. Yeah, and the people who come with you can do a lot of fun things. They have museums, they have, trying to remember all the things they had out there.
Hey, there was one more sheet.
I'm a no now.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm a no now.
You're no.
Yeah.
I just need to get rooms and I have.
So I got my own.
And you got yours.
You get mine.
I got yours. And you weren't going in.
Okay.
Or maybe. Are you still making, that's fine, I just want to make sure. Okay.
Well, you need to know as soon as possible.
Yes, just
Okay.
so the rooms don't.
Right, right.
Just wanted to share that. I was gonna do a little PowerPoint thing, but there's no time, but just.
It's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Let's go to Jake. And then Jake, I don't know how long you want to spend on the training and then you wanted to do a tour. Is that right? Is the tour? Mm-hmm. Ah. So, okay, so we could go where on the tour? Southfields, Lake Creek, show them the battery and all that. Okay, and then nothing up Snake Creek? Okay. Who's ready to go?
Oh, stop somewhere on the way, but I'm looking to go to Lake Creek. I understand if
Yeah,
that would be more
that's a good
direction
one.
with me. I've been to Snake Creek a couple of times, so.
Yeah. I've been out to the.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do a motion to adjourn, please, and then let's get together to go there. Okay, who wants to?
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.